Hey guys, welcome back to the Astro Imaging channel. Tonight's session is going to be a session presented by Tolga on CCD Commander. But as always, before we go into that session, I am going to show off our image of the week, which again this week, I believe Chris was our winner last week, but goes to Chris Gomez for this M33. I'm sorry. Shot in LRGB and H-alpha, and shot with an RC8 and a QSA 690 WSG8. And as always, you can go on our website, leave them a comment, tell them you like it, or if you just want to go on and submit an image, this is your spot right here, Image of the Week submission. Click that, scan down to the bottom, and you put all of your info in there, and then you're good to go. That said, I'm going to take my screen back, and I am going to hand it over to Tolga, who's in the room. Tolga, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, so this is not going to be a very elaborate presentation. I don't claim to be an expert in CCD Commander. I use it myself, and I figured it'd just be a good idea to do a little presentation on it. So let me just start my share my screen. You see?
I see your hangout. Yes, I see your presentation now. Yep.
Okay, so it's an automation software, but unlike SGP, it doesn't run devices. So it basically runs. It tells. So you would at least need either MaximDL or SkyX or CCD Soft or FocusMax. You would need, it just tells these other software what to do. What it does is, you can automate. You can take an image, plate solve, meridian flips, start auto guiding. It has all these features. But like I said, second software to do this. So it can run. You can run all the automation devices like rotator, obviously the focuser, camera, a mount, a rotator, dome control. It has intelligent temperature control, which means that it has the ability to bring the temperature down gradually and bring it up gradually at the end of the session. There's another feature that has the next two features that what you could do is that you could set CCD Commander to wait for things. You can wait for your object to degrees, or you can wait for the moon to set, or you can wait for the sun to rise, wait for object for 30 degrees, or moon, and you can put these commands in some sort of an order to do different things. I'm going to do a small a demonstration of how it's done. This is what the best part I like about CCD Commander. Additionally, it does automatic flat. It will change the exposure. You could just do sky flats, and it will automatically adjust the exposure time as the sky gets darker or brighter. It's scriptable, just like MaximDL and SkyX is scriptable from external sources. So is CCD Commander. CCD Commander accepts script commands. For instance, I have one script where I tried where an external script that prompt sends a script to my digiloggers, which powers everything on, and then sends a second script to CCD Commander to launch with a certain file, with whatever file that I have. So currently it works with SkyX 6.0 or later, and obviously the earliest it will work on is 6. CCD Soft 5 or Maximum 4.1 are the earliest ones. Obviously, it does work So those are, I'm just going to go back to that slide first. I'm going to say something about that. So SkyX and MaximDL, or SkyX or MaximDL or CCD Soft is a necessity. You have to have one of those to use to be able to. On top of that, you could have optional software that you could use. And those are, you know, Pinpoint, Focus Max, you know, basically you can run all these third-party softwares that, you know, for instance, the Boltwood cloud sensor. The Boltwood cloud sensor and pause your imaging session or close the dome, rotate your camera, these things. So actually, this is the end of the presentation. What do you call it? My slides. I just wanted to show you how this works live. Can you guys still see it on the screen?
Yes, we can.
First of all, I'm going to go through how to set it up. When you launch CCD Commander, first thing I'm going to say something. The CCD Commander and the second software, such as in this case we're going to be using SkyX, they both have to be running in admin mode to be able to talk to each other. And if you just launch them regularly, they won't be able to. So that's the first thing. You just go into properties of the thing and just say run as administrator. So once that's done, you go to your setup, and the first thing to do is set up your control devices. Here you pick what controls your mount. You know, you could use Sky 6 and straight ASCOM driver of a mount, or SkyX. Planetarium, you don't. It's nice. I use SkyX. Focuser control could use any of these. MaximDL focus or SkyX at focus 2. Or another one is the Focus Max Acquire Star. I'll get back to that later. You could use a rotator. I don't have a rotator. I don't have a dome. And I do monitor the weather, and I'll go through that, how I do this in my case. I use a Boltwood weather. It's not actually a device, it's just a file. Second, under setup, you know, you would set up your devices over here. You would put how many minutes you could go past the meridian. Important thing, you put over here how much delay your mount requires after a slew. You know, mounts could require up to 60 seconds after a delay. And if you put that delay over here, it will do that after every slew, even a dither. So I would point out. Here you select your guide star parameters. You could select a minimum exposure, and increments in between. So if you set your minimum exposure to 5 seconds and maximum to 30 seconds at 2 seconds, it would first do a 5-second exposure, and if you couldn't find the guide star with these, you put those over here too. 3,000. You want to pick a guide star between 3,000 and 20,000, and if you can't find the guide star with that 5-second exposure, it would raise the exposure time by 2 seconds, take another exposure and look for another star, and it would increase it 2-second increments until it gets to 30. If you can't find it, it gives up. Obviously, if you're not going to find a guide star at 30-second exposures. Next tab is on where to save your images. This is obviously up to you. You could different softwares you could use. You could use Pinpoint, Light, Pinpoint, Full, SkyX. In my case, it's set for SkyX. You where it will send you emails if there's a failure. Focus options. You could set up your, and here's a little trick. A lot of software, such as Maxim and SkyX, also have filter offsets. You can't have them set on both software. You either have to do here. So that's one thing that should be pointed out. If you enable the filter offsets here, that they're disabled in Maxim or SkyX or CCD Soft. Here you set up retry focus run. If it fails, how many times you want to retry. But it will continue. If it fails, it will continue. It won't just shut down. If focus fails, it will continue. So this is how you basically set it up. You can also set up your weather monitor, rotator. But first, you have to enable them under the control device here. For instance, I'll pick one over here just to show you. If I do this, then the rotator will be enabled, and then you could continue. I'm going to change. So and here's a typical night of my. So let me get back start to the beginning a little bit. So CCD Commander. First of all, questions?
The only question was, so it's a wrapper for other programs, and is that how you would describe it?
Correct. It's almost like an exterior scripting program that runs others, Maxim and SkyX. So if you already invested in Maxim and SkyX, and then you don't want to go buy, you don't want to run another software, this is a very small software, reasonably cheap. It's $99, and it does a lot of things. But you're correct in a sense that it doesn't do anything by itself.
Okay, thank you.
So this is my typical run on one night. So I set up, I put a wait command, and the way you do that is you press F7 and then you pick an object. You can wait for sun, moon, or actually type the object here in this section. And you could set down the altitude. And in this case, it's wait for the sun until it's at 0. And here's sub command list. In that, the name of the file is called startup. In that startup file, I'll show you what's in it. Which means that set my cooler. Just start up, basically connect to the camera and turn. It's not going to do anything. That's my startup. And then actually wait again. Wait for the sun to 0, and then start up the sun again until the sun reaches -13 altitude. And then if you're connected to your planetarium software, if you press it over here, it'll tell you what time that's going to be. And that obviously would change every day. So this is where I connect. We're not going to go over that. This is in my case, this is pretty complicated, so I'm not going to go through that. But if you had your own AGG or Boltwood weather monitor, it would control that, sample that file every so many minutes, and then put your. You could close your dome or pause your imaging run if you're in a gang observatory. If you have no control of, like in my case, I don't have control of the roof, but I can still monitor the weather file that the roof controller is using and put if the roof closes. So on this night, we to go, and then the next thing is to go shoot some HA target here. sky is not dark enough. I don't want to shoot my L channel yet. So that's another sub action. It's an action like this, but it's a sub action, and we'll look to see what it is. It's go focus, move to the target, and take 2 15-minute exposures. And what I said is to do that 10 times. But then I put a control in there to stop it. That means that 10 times is more than enough until the moon sets. So that means the sun is going to set at 7:12. This is going to start at 7:12. And then it's going to shoot. It says skip here when moon sets. It's going to shoot this list until the moon sets. We could look to see what that time is. Basically a half hour. So it's only going to be able to shoot 2 exposures. But, you know, it's too light anyways. So, but, you know, every day this is going to change. The moon is going to, I'm going to shoot more H alpha tomorrow because the moon is going to set later. So I'm going to shoot my H alpha until the moon sets. And then I'm going to switch to an L frame. Shoot that 30 times. And now my control is my altitude. Because I'm shooting L frames, I want to shoot that as crisp as possible, as high as possible. I want to shoot them below 30 degrees. So what I said is that I shoot this until my target goes down below 30 degrees altitude. You know what? Shoot some RGB frames because, you know, I'm going to shoot them on 2x2 anyway, so I may not care if they're at this crisp as the L frames. Here's another thing that I should go over. Look at what I'm doing here. I'm focusing first, moving to a target exposure. The reason why I'm doing that is because in SkyX, I'm moving to a focus star when I do focus. So here's something very important about CCD Commander. Things have to make logic sense. So if I move to my target first, then focused, and then took an exposure, I'm going to expose that not at my target. So things have to make logic sense. As in you have to put the list of things here in the order that, just like you were sitting in front of the computer and you were doing them. So Adam, are there any questions?
There haven't been any new questions.
Okay. Adam, did you say there hasn't been any new questions?
No, there haven't been any new questions.
Oh, okay. So we're going to continue down, and then I'm going to do a few examples of how to build these. So where were we? So we're taking L frames, and then we're waiting. We're going to continue shooting L frames until our target gets below 30 degrees altitude, and then we're going to switch to RGB, and then so that means just skip. I don't want them to do them at all. Let's just ignore all these without a check marks. So this is going to shoot until basically sunrise, and run a shutdown procedure, which is park the mount and then use the intelligent cooler action, then turn the cooler off, and you know, but it does that gradually. It will do, you know, if you're at -30, it will bring -10, 0, and then finally shut the cooler down. So now let's go back and do some examples of how to build actions. So let's do a M31. Let's do a focus run. So with the L filter, let's focus with an L filter. So when I do this, because my SkyX is go to a focus star, it's automatically even if it's position, it's going to go star on focus. So my next action is going to be move to RA and deck. And here, I want to do M31. I would type, and then click on Find Object in Sky. And that's actually doing a query in SkyX right now. Oh, actually, it filled in the deck and RA. So that's basically it. I will put that. Let's move. And then go ahead. We're going to take some pictures. Take images. And here's where it gets interesting. Put down your exposure time and number of exposures. You could do one and just repeat the same action. You would just be focused for every single exposure. So let's do 5-minute exposures, and let's do 6 of them. So that's half hour. On with the L filter and light frame type. So, and here's how you set up your enable your auto guider. Remember, at the setup, we already had some of these settings figured out. We told it what the minimum exposure time is. We gave it a bunch of parameters, but here we can fine tune them a little bit. But there's really not much you could do except so that it will find the guide star. Here you can set up your full frame or half frame. There's also a plate solve, or here, and then it will do a plate solve. Flip. Oh, here's another thing we need to do. So we set up our thing, but I'm going to enter another action over here because I don't have to do it, but I need to show it. We're going to put a plate solve action in here. So what we're going to do, this is obviously it would change depending on your mount, but on a paramount, you wouldn't sync it. You would do an offset. You would set your exposure time, binning, and then put in here. And then now it would focus, plate solve, and reslew, and then start the exposure. And inside the exposure settings, we're going to dither too. How are we going to? On mine, it's done differently. There's a. I forget what it was. So now what we do is we save this. We created this list, and now we save this as, name it, like a M31L. So now this is just action list that I made and saved. So I'm going to clear this, and I'm going to create a new action. And the new action, in the new action, my action is going to be to run that sub action, the one that I just created, which I would pick this, the file that I just created. So that's what I was doing in mine. And the advantage is that you can repeat this. You don't have to type this 5 times to repeat it 5 times. If you create a sub action to do them, you could come here and do 10, and it will just do the same thing. Even though there are 6 exposures in each line, I can repeat And then now I'm going to put a control underneath. I'm going to say skip ahead at altitude. And in this one, I'm going to put down, let's say, M33. I'm just making these things up. You see it automatically filled up the from SkyX. We're going to change this to rise. We're going to change this to 30. So I'm going to start with M31. And I'm going to switch. I'm going to wait till M33 comes up at 30 degrees. And then I'm going to, you know, do another sub-action list for M33. Imagine I've done that already. And it's the same one. Let's say this one. I already had one, for let's say. So what we're going to do is we're going to M31 10 times, which may not be 10 times. It could be 1, because it's going to keep checking the position of M33 until it gets to 30 degrees altitude. And when it gets there, it's going to switch over to it and then start exposing that. What's nice about this feature is that you could shoot targets at their best locations. You know, you don't. I don't know if other software except ACP has this feature. And I'll go back over here. So this is the website, CCD Commander. They do have a pretty Yahoo group for support, and the owner's name is Matt, and he answers my questions. It costs not much; it's $99, and I don't know what this 1-year upgrade is. I never upgraded mine. I bought mine 2 years. It's still the same. I haven't upgraded mine. It doesn't stop working if you don't pay the $30. I guess it's to be able to download the latest. And they also have a 45-day trial if you you know, if you want to check it out. But I find that these 30-day, 40-day trials with software is basically useless. It's like you don't convince enough to make a decision on if you should buy it or not. You end up either buying it or giving up on it when you run into a couple of problems. So that's basically what I have, and I just wanted to show you what it does and give us a small demonstration. Set it up.
Awesome. Thank you, Tolga. So you're using this. You use this?
Yes, I use this.
Okay.
Let me see. We may be able to watch it live. I don't want to. Actually, the screen right now.
Yes.
So this is actually my remote system in Deep Sky West, and this is actually currently running it. So here's what it's doing. It waited for now. That's complete. It did my startup list. It waited for the sun to rise, set again to -13, and pulled the weather monitor. Then it flew to this target, took some RGB frames until my actual target that I want to shoot tonight with L filter raised up to 70 degrees, and then yeah, and then it started taking the L frames, and that's what it's running right now, as you can see. And then it's going to run that until this target goes below 40 degrees, and then it's going to start RGB frames, and it's going to do that until the morning, and it's going to shut down. So this is actually what you're seeing is the live CCD Commander running SkyX. Currently this is, and then if you click on the status window, you see everything that it does. So let's look at that a little bit. So at 5:30, it connected the camera. It's waited for the sun. And then let's get to the interesting stuff. It ran a focus action with R filter. It found focus, moved to the coordinates. It did a focus slew delay. Remember that section that you could put any number over there? I have a certain amount of delay on mine because I don't guide, so I need my mount to settle before I start exposing. Oh, actually, it just jumped because it started doing something else. So it does 6 exposures, goes back, focuses, and comes back. So basically, this is just, it's running live. And it will do this all night.
You are getting a specific question.
Okay, go ahead.
Did you ever have error messages when clicking on Calibrate in CCD Commander while using automatic calibration in the SkyX camera add-on? Dennis, it's error message.
I didn't understand the question, so can you read that again?
Right, so when he's using the automatic calibration in the SkyX camera add-on.
Automatic what calibration?
Automatic. He just says automatic calibration. I have to assume that it's that it sounds like he's calibrating each sub individually. Maybe I'm not quite sure. I know I've seen.
Oh, he's deducting dark frames from his maybe guide images. Is that what he's talking about? Yes, you will get an error like that. Point to the wrong file name or things like that. That's actually a SkyX question, not a CCD Commander question.
Okay.
Right now,
I'm just someone asked for an invite to get in here, so I don't know if
they want to ask questions.
Yeah, I posted it publicly.
I could take some questions, but they would have to be kind of with the way I'm using it. If you're going to ask questions about Maxim DL, I may or may not be able to answer them.
I have a question for you, Tolga.
Sure.
This is a good system. I've actually used it, and I've used several other command software, I think they're called, I forget, to control my imaging session. Mm-hmm. But I stopped doing that when SGP came out because, frankly, SGP did all that stuff and it seemed to be a comprehensive package. The other stuff all assumes that I'm going to own the Sky or Maxim or both, and that I'm going to have a full license for Pinpoint, not Pinpoint LE. Now, maybe some of that's changed because it's been 4 or 5 years, 3 years since I used that CCD Autopilot, is it? And CCD Commander.
This is CCD Commander.
Yeah,
a lot of people make that mistake. But we should make that clear. This is CCD Commander, not Autopilot.
But isn't it Autopilot that does the same thing? Same kind of thing?
Same kind of thing.
Yeah, okay. So what I'm saying is that I've invested, at one point or another, I bought each of those suckers. Mm-hmm. And then I stopped using the other ones because I found out SGP did it more simply. Why should I be buying the CCD Commander when there are other pieces of software that do it without having to buy Maxim and SkyX, etc.?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I guess I would recommend that the people who already own Maxim or SkyX, and they like it. As you guys know, I like using SkyX. I think I find it very useful. In my case, I didn't want to switch to other software and learn the whole thing where I already know SkyX inside out.
I think one thing that should be pointed out, though, too, is SkyX is basically a planetarium software, right? So Sequence Generator Pro is
without its add-ons, right? Yeah, if you we're not talking SkyX, just the basic
Camera
SkyX.
add-on.
We're talking about camera add-on,
Well, the camera add-on, for instance, does
camera add-on and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, doesn't the camera add-on do much of the same thing that what you just described? In CCD
No, it doesn't.
Commander?
It doesn't do automation. Like you could take a series of images. Like you could say, go get 30s and 30 Rs, but it won't focus in between, and it won't do a meridian flip.
Okay.
So you need this is what you need the CCD command for, to tell SkyX what to do.
One of the difficulties I had, by the way, we've had a few other people join inside the room, and they may or may not have noticed that they've gotten muted almost immediately. Most of us, when we're in the room, do our mute. We mute ourselves so that we don't cause too much bandwidth problems and just inadvertent noise in the background. So it's nothing personal. It's just we all mute ourselves, and if we need to speak, we go and unmute ourselves so that we can say something. So that's just a courtesy explanation. But back to my discussion of CCD Commander and several other programs that I used to automate my acquisition sessions before I stumbled into Sequence Generator Pro. One of the difficulties I had with them was I sometimes couldn't figure out where the mistake was being made. For instance, my program stalled every morning and would never shut itself down because it was waiting for information from the sky. Meanwhile, the sky had shut itself off because in the third menu over and the second subscreen down on that menu, I hadn't checked a box. Okay, Tolga, tell us about that, because you know what I mean. You're laughing. So
no, because SkyX is it has quirks like that. Just like you said, it's like a second submenu, and under a second box, it will be like a little checkbox that would disable something that. I'll give you a perfect example. Somebody called me the other day, and they changed the camera. They went from a small 9-megapixel camera, and they put a Canon camera in there, and they were using a Canon camera, and then they went to a QSI 690, and on a long focal length scope, and this setting over here, and look, this is how would you know this? This setting right here. If the height and width is larger than 2500 pixels, crop the image. So if you take a QSI on a long focal length telescope and crop it further, obviously you're not going to be able to solve. So it was just a setting like that, but I would know how to fix it, but somebody who didn't know that was there, never going to be able to find that.
Tolga, Dennis did post in chat a screenshot of, I think, the spot where he's having, where he's selecting the reduction, as it's called, whether it's auto dark or full calibration. And I don't know if you recognize that screen. not being familiar with the program and not
Yes,
being
I am familiar with it.
yeah. So does that look familiar to you? Do you know what possibly he
does.
could be doing wrong, or does he have to contact the developer?
So let me scroll back and look at the calibrate in CCDC. Well, you don't do both. That's what that's one of the things that needs to be set up. Like I said, you remember I talked about this on sets. If two software, so one software is running the other, right? And then you can't have filter offsets set up on both. They're going to conflict with each other. So if you're doing auto calibrating in CCDC, you can't have auto calibrate enabled in SkyX. They're going to do the same thing.
Okay, so you think the two programs are conflicting? I'm
Right,
looking
because both programs have the option to do this. You can have SkyX to do a dark on a like for instance, if you have a big SDI camera has a shutter, right? You can do auto darks on guide frames. But then if you set SkyX to do auto darks and then you go tell CCD Commander to do the same thing, they're going to conflict. You got to pick one or the other.
Okay. Now, Dennis, I'm actually wondering, are you doing these on guide frames or are these your actual images? I see 1 second, so it looks like guide frames to me.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to auto calibrate light frames, right?
That's what I wanted to make sure, because if his problem is that he's trying to auto calibrate his light frames, then I would say good, because you don't want to do that anyway.
You don't want to do that anyways, right?
I mean, unless, I don't know, for astrometry or something like that, but I wouldn't expect so. I
mean, technically you could. I mean, you know, SkyX has the capability of, you know, you could throw calibration frames. Technically you could, but it's not, I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, so he's actually saying image subs, not guide frames, and I would
then tell him to stop it.
Yeah, I would advise against that. You could do so much more. I don't want to say manually because it might seem complex. I don't know if you have PixInsight, but you'll get much better results by doing the full calibration routine. I mean, I'm not quite sure what goes into calibrating in these programs, but you want to make sure you have a full stack of darks and a full stack of flats matched to each filter. And biases as well, and you want to make sure you get the math correct in that. So I would just wonder whether they're taking a shortcut to get getting the math wrong in the process. Because I don't see. My assumption is that what they're doing is they're taking. Okay, same difference, darks, flats, bias, darks, flats. So you're taking your darks, flats, bias, and dark flats in advance?
And then he's trying to put them in SkyX and then calibrate the image they come? That's not, you should not do that.
Yeah, there's some spots where I would question the process. I mean, there might be a way. I'm not saying they haven't thought it all through. But I do know, like, okay, for example, in
I mean, we can, you know what, that would be a good question to Richard Wright when he comes to, isn't he going to come do a presentation in a couple of weeks?
In the future, I'm going to have to contact him about that, but yes.
Right, that would be a good question for him to see if he would recommend that. I know it's capable of doing it. I've never done it on a light frame. I have done it on guide frames.
Right. Now, okay, so why is it in the program then? I'll just, I believe CCD Ops has the same thing. Which it takes a dark frame. First of all, it takes your light frame, takes a dark frame, and then basically subtracts the dark, right? The program will do it, and it might improve the results, but it also, if you're going for a full proper calibration, it's not it's going to mess you up in the future. Some people might use it. I can't quite think of a scenario where you'd want to use it besides guide frames.
Like for instance, like you can take your guide frames and completely correct them, like flat correct your guide frames. Like
it does help you determine proper exposure.
Like this is not a SkyX tutorial or anything like that, but let me just answer that real fast. What would be a use for that? Let's say you have extreme vignetting around your OAG on your guide frames. You could take some flat frames with your guide camera vignetting in your guide frames if you're that concerned about it. You know, I mean, here you go. Here's a
So he's saying, yeah, everything is set up in advance and it pulls the files from a directory. So I guess if you get it all correct,
right.
There's
but like
no
I said, that's a SkyX question. It's not a CCD Commander question.
Yeah. Yeah, so we may not be the right
to,
ones.
To answer his question, he should disable that whole thing if he wants to use, if he wants to automate SkyX with CCD Commander and then calibrate his frames afterwards.
Right. Now, assuming you're still registering them afterwards or aligning them afterwards, I would think you'd probably be better off just doing the full calibration after the fact. Yeah, and he's saying, yeah, error message number 5 in CCD Commander. I'm unfamiliar with the error messages and all that, so it might be a more specific question for them. But I don't know. Maybe look into.
So let me go back to what Alex. Let me go back to what Alex saying. He's absolutely right. Like I would not tell somebody right now to go get Maxim and then go get SkyX and then go buy Focus Max and then go ahead and get a CCD Commander and CCD Autopilot to automate their stuff when there's a product like SGP out there that does it all for $100. This was a solution for me, and maybe there are some other people on the same boat as me who already invested before SGP was popular, you know, in these, and they already have the software, and they want to do this. And somebody who's familiar with SGP may be able to answer. Does SGP have the skip ahead feature, wait for time, wait for altitude kind of features?
Yes.
It does.
Oh, it does? Like you can do multiple, you could shoot some target until midnight.
In all fairness, what SGP has is for each separate target, you can specify the times that you want it to happen, and you know, don't start the process until 1950 and end it by 12:05 or something like that.
So you could you would actually type it. You know, you would figure out what time it is, and then
you would type it in. It's not looking up. Yours is much more sophisticated than and what's the name of the piece of software?
I do believe it's working with Deep Sky Object Browser now, though, or DSO browser, to get that exact same kind of functionality.
Does it?
I haven't had an opportunity to test it much yet. But
I know that you can use Deep Sky browser to import your target data information as far as location, but I didn't know that it was. And I'm willing to stand corrected on this. I didn't know that it would actually go access it and see if the object is up or anything like that. Let's see if we get a response over in the comments.
Yeah, you guys are SGP people. Like,
yeah,
I have no idea.
There's what's the other piece of software that actually you just type in the list of all your favorite objects that you want to take pictures of, and it orders ACP, and it orders them for the next rest of your life until each object is imaged right when it is in the ideal position. And
CCD Navigator does that.
And then,
no, that's actually ACP Scheduler, which is an add-on to ACP.
okay. So
I thought CCD Navigator did that too, right? Isn't that what CCD Navigator does?
Well, CD Navigator just like shows you what's going on. I don't know if it does anything beyond that. I think
there's
CCD
a whole lot of these that are
Autopilot-
named the same that
Yeah.
are hard to keep track of.
Yeah.
So
So, like I said, I think the two favorite things that CCD Commander does. Okay, let's work parts where it needs another software. Let's say that you already own the software, and now you already have these, and you want to, use it or not. And my favorite part is what I showed you. I don't have to modify that list every night. I don't have to, I can start my system at noon when when I wake up in the morning. I can go to my remote computer. I hit run, and it will just sit there until the sun rises. I don't have to figure out what time the sun is going to rise, or the moon is going to set, or my target is going to get to 70 degrees or whatnot. It does that live as it goes.
and I do not believe SGP does that. You can tell it start working tonight at 10 minutes to 8, but and start cooling and do whatever it's supposed to be doing at a specific time. But I do not know that there is a way to get it to figure out what time it is. And
Right,
I'm
like,
be correct on that.
What the screenshot I showed before of the remote observatory that was running, I started that up about 4 hours ago. I just hit run on CCD Commander, and I was confident that it was just gonna go. And the next time I checked was just with you guys live. And actually,
Cool. I know we did get some other people in the room. I don't know if anyone who was invited into the room had specific questions that they wanted to ask Tolga. Or if there were any specific questions on the outside, with the exception of error messages that we probably would probably have to go to.
error messages are gonna have to go, to their. I'm not gonna know what error message means what.
Yeah, I mean, it could be something as simple as wrong file format. It could be something as complex as bad math in the when they're trying to apply the dark to the the bias.
Yeah, I mean, and if we're still talking about the same person who asked the question before, the first thing he needs to do is just get rid of the pre-calibration in SkyX. That's a no. That's gotta go.
Hey, Tolga, when
Yes.
when I was messing with this stuff back in 4 or 5 years ago, you couldn't do it with pinpoint light. Are you sure that you can do it? Pinpoint light is the pinpoint that is sold along with your copy of Maxim, or it was at the time. Can you do it with pinpoint light?
It is the only way I can answer that question is it's listed in the software list what it could for plate solve, but I haven't tried it, so I can't confirm for sure that if it works.
Yeah. And Focus Max is the free version or the $150 version? Do you know?
Three. It works both with 3 or 4. And use 4. And here's a little. Here's the reason why it may not have worked. What you're talking about. If you use Focus 4 with Acquire Star, then it needs pinpoint, full version pinpoint. Because
that was too many words for me. I got lost.
So I'll start over. If you use Focus Max 4 with enabled with Acquire Star, then you need pinpoint, full version pinpoint for all that to work together. The reason why is that it does this. It will salute to a focus star, but plate solves that. It will salute to a focus star. Plate ensures that it's that star is that star that is slew to, and then we'll pick up that star for focus, and to be able to place pinpoint. So it's Focus Max that needs it, not CCD Commander. Yeah, it gets a little complicated, I know.
Thanks.
Dennis Wild is commenting that he's happy with SkyX's plate solve.
Yeah, that's one thing that I better, more, I can't say more. SkyX's plate solve, if set up properly, will never fail. Never. I've never had it fail. It shoots through clouds, leaves, whatever. Unless if there's like 5-6 stars, barely, it will solve it. And I've never had play solve fail on me. If it's set up properly, I should just draw, put that in there.
Very cool. Interesting. We all have our own preferred ways of doing things, and
yeah.
In general, I think it's just good to have a bunch of options.
Yeah.
And I would probably think,
on the other hand, like I said before, I mean, it was fresh starting today, and then I had to go buy fresh software for my new mount. Am I going to go buy Mac and CCD Commander to be able to figure out what time the sun rises? I mean, I don't know, right?
yeah.
When you can go buy SGP for what? How much? $99? That runs everything?
Well, all we can do is we can present people with the options, and
yeah. So this is basically a how-to, right? Exactly. Not to. So that's basically what I have.
So just a quick update on the SGP planning thing. To answer your question, Alex, but since it was relevant to this, is it is in beta phase right now. But there's information on this link that I just shared. I'm not actually in the website chat. So
And I think you shared it over on the Google comments rather than or did you share it also in the?
I'm coming over to share it here now.
Okay. Yeah, I don't go to betas because I have enough difficulties in my life just doing things that are proven. So I'll let other people live out there on the bleeding edge of what's going to happen.
So, Josh, just to clarify, with this new beta version and when that becomes available, and it's going to have kind of the same capability?
It appears so. It looks like it basically is giving you elevations to shoot from.
And where does it pull the information from?
I believe it's from DSO browser. Again, I haven't used this myself yet, so I don't have any experience or a ton of information on it. But I posted a link to the page that talks about all of it, both here and in the chat room. So maybe that's something that we can explore in the near future with another episode.
yeah,
I would like to know that, how it works.
yeah, it definitely seems interesting. I only had a chance to kind of browse it, but definitely seems interesting. All right, so it was a very good presentation. Thank you, Tolga, for giving us a tour of the software. We are
Thank you.
discussing next week. It sounds like we're going to have something like an introduction to statistics presented by Alex, so that basically you can kind of understand a little bit about what we mean when we say a standard deviation or RMS or all this jargon that we use that probably means something, but you're never quite sure. But it does help you understand a little bit about what's going on behind the program. That is basically all I've got for today. Remember to submit your images for Image of the Week. I don't know. I think that's it. So, guys, thanks for watching. If no one else in the room has any questions or comments, I see nothing in, I'm going to say good night. And again, see you next week.